I met Claire 2 years ago. We're both from the USA, and we moved in together after a few months. I am 29, and I've always had animals. My dog, Bruno, came with me when I left my parents. He's an old dog, calm and steady, the kind that listens without needing much. Claire had a cat, Mabel, who followed her everywhere. They settled into the apartment. Problems began slowly. Claire complained about the dog more and more. She said she didn't want a dog in her life and that it made her uncomfortable. Then she gave me an ultimatum. Get rid of Bruno, or she wouldn't come home. She sounded certain. My chest tightened. Bruno wasn't just a pet. He had been there for me in hard times. Letting him go felt wrong. I tried small compromises. I cleaned more. I kept Bruno in places that seemed less intrusive. I made an effort for Claire and Mabel. It seemed to help, but the tone between us changed. She began drawing lines I did not expect. One morning, I woke early and found Claire on the couch with Mabel in her lap. Bruno slept near the bedroom door. For a moment, I thought things might be okay. Then Claire stood and picked up a heavy stone from the shelf, moving toward Bruno. Her face was flat, like someone doing a job she had decided on. I stepped between them. I used a calm voice and called Bruno's name. He lifted his head and wagged, unaware of the danger. Claire raised the stone. Time narrowed to that single motion. I felt a tightness in my throat, but I kept my stance. What happened next surprised me. Mabel leapt from Claire's lap and positioned herself right between Claire and Bruno. She hissed and planted herself like she was protecting something. Claire hesitated, the stone half raised. For a second, I saw uncertainty cross her face. Bruno moved forward a little and put himself between us, too. Not aggressive, just steady. The stone slipped from Claire's fingers and rolled across the floor. She stared at it, then at Mabel, then at me. The air felt suddenly full of the weight of what had just been stopped. I picked Bruno up and walked back to the bedroom. I shut the door slowly and sat on the floor with him in my arms. I slept there with him, listening to the apartment breathe. I felt like everything had shifted and that the next steps needed care. The morning after, Claire was distant. She acted as if nothing dramatic had happened, but the stone and Mabel's leap left a mark on both of us. Over the following days, I watched Claire more closely. She kept up a polite distance, but I noticed other things, small acts that suggested she wanted control. I found a note in the laundry basket that read, "Decide soon." That line felt colder than the stone ever could. I began to plan, not with anger, but with clarity. I thought about how to protect Bruno and how to make sure no one could make him vanish from my life. I also thought about Claire's own edges, how small moments reveal larger truths. This is my life, and Bruno is part of it. I won't let someone else erase that without consequence. I won't stoop to cruelty, but I won't submit either. The next part of this story is about the choices I made and the way things returned to me when people pushed too far. After that morning, things between Claire and me turned quiet. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind that hides tension under every word. She stopped talking about the dog issue, but her silence said more than words ever could. She began sleeping in the guest room, claiming she needed space. Mabel still followed her everywhere, while Bruno stayed close to me, sensing something was off. I spent most evenings sitting on the porch with Bruno. He'd rest his head on my foot, eyes half closed, calm as ever. I remember thinking how strange it was, a creature so loyal, so gentle, being the reason someone claimed they couldn't love me. That thought alone made me start looking at Claire differently. One night, I walked into the kitchen to grab some water and saw Claire on a video call. Her tone was sweet, too sweet. When she noticed me, she quickly ended the call. "Work stuff," she said. But she didn't have her laptop open, and her phone screen was still glowing with someone's smiling face when I glanced at it. That was the moment I decided to stop reacting and start observing. Over the next few days, I watched patterns. She left the house around the same time every evening, saying she was going for walks. Mabel stayed home, curled up on the couch, and Bruno would tilt his head at the door after she left, almost like he wanted to tell me something. I didn't follow her immediately. I waited until the pieces felt ready. Then, one Thursday, I quietly took Bruno with me and followed her car. She drove across town, parked behind a small diner, and got out smiling. The same smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. She met a man there. They hugged, and he kissed her on the side of the head before they went inside. I stood by my car for a while, trying to keep my hands from shaking. I wasn't angry the way I expected to be. It was like my emotions were rearranging themselves into something sharper. That night, when she came home, she acted normal. Asked how my day was. Petted Bruno once, then pulled her hand back like she'd touched something dirty. I just nodded quietly. The next morning, she said she'd be visiting her sister for a few days. I smiled and said, "That's good. Take your time." But I had already decided what I was going to do. Before she left, I went through my storage box, the one with all our shared papers, leases, and receipts. everything that had both our names on it. I made copies. Quietly, methodically. I moved my most important documents, spare cash, and Bruno's records into a separate folder. I wasn't planning to run. I was preparing for her too. The next day, she was gone. Bruno and I had the house to ourselves. For the first time in months, it felt peaceful. The air felt lighter, cleaner. I made breakfast, shared a bit of toast with Bruno, and sat at the kitchen table where Claire used to complain about dog hair. I spent the next few days thinking, not about her betrayal, but about what kind of person tries to make someone choose between love and loyalty. I realized she didn't just dislike dogs. She disliked the part of me that could love without conditions. When she finally came back, 3 days later, her tone was different. Cold, formal. "We need to talk," she said. I looked at Bruno, then at her. "Yeah," I said, "we really do." What she didn't know was that while she was gone, something had happened, something that would turn the story completely around. And when she found out, she'd finally understand what it means when karma walks in quietly, with a leash in its hand. When Claire came back, she walked through the door like she owned the place, confident, controlled, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut. Bruno was lying near the couch, and the moment she saw him, that familiar irritation crossed her face. I could see it, the same disgust she never even tried to hide anymore. She said, "We need to talk about the future." I looked at her and said, "Sure, but whose future are we talking about? Ours or yours?" She paused for a moment, clearly thrown off. Then she said it again, this time slower, more deliberate. "I meant what I said before. I can't live with a dog. Either he goes, or I do." I nodded slowly. "All right," I said, "if that's what you want." She blinked, maybe expecting a fight. But there wasn't one. Instead, I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and told her I was taking Bruno for a walk. Before I left, I turned back and said, "You know, you should check your bank app when I'm gone." She frowned, but I didn't explain. Bruno and I went for a long drive, not a walk. We ended up at a small cabin 2 towns away that I'd rented a few days earlier. I'd been planning this quietly ever since that night I saw her with the other man. See, when Claire said she was going to her sister's, I knew she was lying. I also knew she'd used my card once before without asking, so I checked everything. Our joint account, shared bills, and credit cards. She'd been slowly draining small amounts for weeks, moving them to a new account. That's when I decided to move first. While she was gone, I transferred all my savings to a private account and canceled her access. The house was in my name, and the lease had only mine listed as the primary tenant. I'd paid every bill. Every trace of shared responsibility was quietly erased. When I got back to the cabin, I opened my laptop and sent her a message. "You don't have to choose anymore. You wanted a life without a dog. Now you have one. Don't come back. Everything you brought here is packed in the garage. Mabel's food is there too. She deserves better." Then I turned off my phone. Back at the house, she must have seen the message. My neighbor later told me she showed up screaming in the driveway, yelling about how I had no right to ruin her life. She tried to call me again and again, but I didn't pick up. When she finally stopped calling, I turned my phone back on just long enough to send one last text. "You hit rock bottom when you tried to hurt what I love. Maybe start rebuilding from there." That night, I sat outside the cabin with Bruno. He was lying beside me, head resting on my leg, eyes half closed as the air grew cool. I didn't feel angry anymore, just calm. Sometimes, revenge doesn't come with noise. Sometimes it's just silence and distance. A week later, I got an email from a mutual friend. Apparently, Claire's new boyfriend had left her after finding out she'd been using his money too. The same trick, the same pattern. She ended up moving back in with her mother. Meanwhile, I started a new chapter quietly. I stayed at the cabin for a few months, doing small freelance work, living simply. Bruno adjusted fast. He'd wake me up every morning, wagging his tail, as if reminding me what real loyalty looks like. That's the thing about people like Claire. They think love is about control, that they can demand loyalty while giving none. But love doesn't work like that. It doesn't bow to ultimatums or survive through fear. And in the end, the person who tried to erase what made me happy ended up alone with her own bitterness. I didn't plan to destroy her life. She did that herself. I just stepped out of the way and let karma take its course. A month passed after I left Claire, and honestly, it was the calmest month of my life. I didn't realize how much tension I had been living under until it was gone. Bruno and I would walk by the lake every morning, then sit outside the cabin while I worked on small projects. Life felt simple, quiet, steady, and real. I hadn't heard from Claire for a while, but that silence didn't last long. One evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. It was her mother. She sounded embarrassed and tired. She said, "I don't know what happened between you and Claire, but she's not doing well. She lost her job, and the man she was seeing left her. I think she regrets everything. I stayed quiet for a moment, then simply said, I hope she learns something from it. Her mother sighed, said she understood, and hung up. It wasn't satisfaction I felt, just closure. The kind that comes when you know life has balanced itself without you lifting a hand. But karma wasn't quite done yet. 2 weeks later, Claire texted me. Can we talk? Please. I miss you. I looked at the message for a while. I didn't feel anger, not even curiosity anymore. Just a quiet reminder of why things ended. But instead of ignoring her, I replied with something honest. Claire, when you tried to hurt Bruno, you made a choice. You showed me what you're capable of. I don't hate you, but I can't let that energy back into my life. I hope you find peace. She didn't respond right away, but a few days later, she sent another text. You were right. I was wrong about everything. I thought I wanted control, but all I did was lose real love. I didn't reply. Some conversations don't need answers. Around that time, I started volunteering at a small animal shelter nearby. It wasn't planned. I was just walking past and saw a sign that said help needed. I went in, offered to help with feeding and cleaning, and soon found myself spending hours there. Bruno came too sometimes. He was always gentle with the rescues. The staff called him the old soul. One afternoon, while cleaning kennels, I found a small note on the shelter's board. It said, you can tell who a person really is by how they treat those who depend on them. That line stayed with me. It summed up everything. Claire had always wanted to change others to fit her comfort. She wanted love on her terms, perfect, controlled, and quiet. But real love isn't tidy. It's patient, protective, and sometimes messy. A few months later, I heard that Claire had moved to another city. She'd lost most of her savings. The new guy had reported her for taking money from his account, and she'd been forced to move back in with her mother temporarily. Her social media was gone, and her old friends had drifted away. And me? I wasn't gloating. I had moved on. I learned that revenge doesn't always need to be loud or cruel. Sometimes it's living well, keeping your peace, and letting time show who people really are. Every night, before bed, Bruno would curl up next to me. He was getting older, slower, but his eyes still carried that same gentle trust. I'd pat his head and say, we made it, buddy. If you asked me what the biggest lesson was, it's this. People will try to test the limits of your kindness, but once they cross the line, you don't owe them another chance to do it again. When I think of Claire now, I don't see anger anymore. I just saw someone who couldn't understand loyalty and paid the price for it. Life balanced itself. Bruno stayed. She didn't. And honestly, that's how it was always supposed to be. It's been over a year since that final text from Claire. Life has changed a lot since then, not in a dramatic, movie-like way, but in the quiet ways that matter. I still live in the cabin, though it's more of a home now. I fixed it up, planted a small garden, and even built a little wooden deck where Bruno likes to sit in the evenings. Bruno's older now. His walks are shorter, his pace slower. But he's happy, and that's all I ever wanted. Peace, not perfection. Now and then, I still think about how close I came to giving him up. How easily I almost traded loyalty for love that wasn't real. It's strange how someone can make you doubt what's right, all because they speak like they're certain. Claire had that kind of confidence, the kind that made people bend until they broke. But I didn't break. I bent, yes. I tried to keep things together, tried to make her see what she was doing. And when she didn't, I let go. That, I've learned, is its own form of revenge, walking away and not looking back. A few months ago, I ran into her by accident. It was at a small market in town. She looked different, thinner, quieter, tired. Mabel wasn't with her. I found out later from a mutual friend that her cat had passed away a few months earlier. That hit me harder than I expected. Mabel was innocent in all of this. When she saw me, she froze for a second, then smiled nervously. Hey, she said, you look good. I nodded. Thanks. There was a long pause. Then she said softly, you were right about everything. I didn't say anything cruel. I just said, take care of yourself. Then I walked away. That was the last time I saw her. After that day, I realized something important. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone back in. It just means freeing yourself from carrying their weight any longer. I wasn't angry anymore. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. Life had already handed her the lessons she needed, and I didn't need to add anything to it. A few weeks later, I sat on the porch with Bruno, watching the sun dip behind the trees. The air smelled like pine and rain. I looked at him and said, we did all right, didn't we? He wagged his tail, slow but steady, and leaned against my leg. That's when it hit me. Karma doesn't always come as punishment. Sometimes it comes as protection. Sometimes the universe just removes people who don't deserve the peace you built. Bruno taught me more about loyalty and love than any human ever could. He stayed when others left. He didn't care about what I had or what I lacked. He just wanted to be near me. That's something people like Claire will never understand. Now, Whenever someone asks me about that chapter of my life, I don't talk about heartbreak or betrayal. I talk about gratitude, for getting out, for learning, for keeping what mattered most. And maybe, deep down, I hope Claire learned too. Maybe she'll never try to control someone else again. Maybe losing everything made her see how wrong she was. Or maybe not. Either way, it's no longer my story to carry. Bruno's asleep now, curled up beside my chair, breathing softly. The sky outside is streaked with orange and purple. I take a slow breath and smile. Peace doesn't always come quickly. Sometimes it takes walking through pain, betrayal, and loss to find it. But once it arrives, it's worth everything. So yeah, she tried to make me choose, her or my dog. In the end, I didn't lose my dog. I lost a person who never really knew what love was. And honestly, that's not a loss at all. What do you think? Did I do the right thing by letting karma handle it instead of fighting back directly? I'd really like to hear what you'd do if you were in my place.